Awesome. So, hello everybody, and thanks for joining us. Today is sort of the kickoff of the Musi Summer Series, which is going to be weekly webinars with special guests who are experts in their field. And this week we've got my good friend Katherine, who is pretty much an expert in recruiting students, which I know is a very hot topic for a lot of teachers. I'll let Katherine take it away in a second, but I figure the format we'll kind of go for is you can drop questions in the chat and I'll keep an eye on those. And then at the end, I'll pop back up and we'll do a little Q&A and kind of field all of those questions. Just feel free to use the chat as much as you need. But other than that, Katherine, thank you for joining us, and I'll let you take it away.
All right, awesome. Thanks so much, Sam. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here with you guys, all the Musi teachers and users, and to be able to have this type of professional development over the summer. So we really appreciate it whenever these events are made possible and made available to music teachers. So I'm super excited to be here to present about student recruitment, as well as how to fill those studios, especially as we're approaching a really good time to recruit, which is the fall. That is always one of the really, really best times that we have that we can recruit those students. So let me share my screen with you guys. Let me find which, I don't know about you guys, but I always have like 5,000 tabs always open at the same time. It drives my husband crazy. Okay, so let's see. We will do, found it. Okay, so let's do this one right here. Okay, so hopefully we can all see that window. And I'll shrink it a little bit. There we go. Yes. So what we are going to talk about today is obviously private music studio teaching, and how to recruit students with that. So this is part of our summer series from Musi. So we're super excited to be here to talk about this. So our plan for today is very simple. We'll do some introductions. We'll talk about what not to do when you're recruiting students and why, and then what to do when you're recruiting students and why. So first of all, this is a little quick thing about my company and myself. My name is Katherine Emeneth. I'm a flutist and a music educator. And when I started on my path to be a musician, I thought I was going to be a college professor. Well, first I thought I was going to be an orchestral flutist, and then that shifted to college professor. And then after auditioning for jobs and interviewing for like 7 years, over 100 different positions, and getting pretty close, but not all the way, I decided, you know what? I want to do things on my own terms. I really want to, make an impact in this world on my own terms without having to rely on red tape or administration or whatever. And so I had always taught kids. I actually have a degree in music education, and I taught elementary music for a year, which was a very wild ride. And I always say that that is when I actually learned how to teach. And that's when I realized I really like teaching kids, but I don't like teaching 600 kids a week. I like teaching one-on-one and in small groups. And so that's when I transitioned to doing more of the private studio teaching thing. And since then, my private studio has grown a lot. I have currently 16 private students that I see every week for an hour. I have a waiting list of over 37 kids that are out there on that list that I refer to other teachers in the area. I run my company, which is called KE Creative, which is where we provide this type of information to music teachers and professional musicians so that they can learn how to make a full-time job on their own terms, not having to wait for a job or wait for permission to do what they want to do. So we teach things like studio building, and everything that goes underneath that umbrella, your finances, your website design, marketing, all of that. And then my teammate is Natalie Semper, and this is her right here with some of her students. And she actually was in my coaching program for private teachers several years ago. And as it started expanding and growing, I was like, you know what, I really need another coach. And she's a perfect example of someone who has made a full-time job out of teaching privately. And so she's great. So we work together. She has 3 rescue dogs right here. And I have this giant Fluff, which is right here. And he's also always behind me sitting on the tile trying to cool off. We live in the Atlanta area, so it's real hot all the time. And so he very much enjoys, sleeping on that ice cold tile. So I have all the degrees. I have a doctorate in music performance, and I've taught at very different universities. And I run a whole full-blown summer flute camp called Fling, which is this picture right here is from Fling. This past year we had 65 kids that joined, and it was only our 3rd year of hosting this camp. So it was a very good success. So I've developed a big skill set of how to teach teachers, how to recruit students, and do it in a way that doesn't feel gross, and do it in a way that is non-icky, because no one likes to sound like a used car salesperson when they're trying to recruit students for their music studio. So my presentations are always very interactive, so don't be shy. It is really important whenever you are thinking about these big topics like recruiting, that you dig deep and you take a look and you see about how things resonate with you, because then that will show you the next step of what you need to do or how you need to think differently. So I'm going to have several prompts through our presentation today, and I encourage you to think about them for a second and then type in the chat if you agree with them, or if you can identify with something like it with a statement that I share. So the first one is this list of things. So let's read through these together a little bit. And I want you to think about the one that either currently resonates with you the most or has in the past. So in terms of starting to recruit students for your private music studio, a lot of people have these if-then statements, right? So first one is, if I charge less than everyone else, then I'll get more students. Or if I go the extra mile by teaching students in their homes, being flexible with my schedule, and having loose payment policies, then I'll make everyone happy and get more students. Or if I email local school music teachers my bio and lessons flyer, then they'll send students to me. So take a moment, think about that, and in the chat, write down 1, 2, or 3. Share with us which one is the one that resonates with you the absolute most. For me, when I was starting out, it was definitely number 2. It was that people pleasing that I always wanted to make sure I was trying to make everyone happy, so then they would have no reason to not take lessons with me. So which one of these is the one that resonates the most? Sam, did you just raise your hand? I saw like a hand like float up. Yeah, that's kind of cool. All right.
Sure if the chat is actually working.
Oh.
So if everyone wants to use the Q&A section to put your comments,
Responses?
that
Yeah.
should be fine as well.
Okay.
For some reason that I'm just nothing's going through the chat, and I'm assuming that people are definitely typing.
Okay.
So yeah, try the Q&A tab if that's not working, and I will troubleshoot in the background over here.
Sounds good. Yes. So please let's try the Q&A. Oh, mine was number 1. I don't see a chat. Mine is number 1. 1, good. Number 3, awesome, Heather. Number 1, Janet, nice. Oh, and by the way, while we're over here, now we're figuring out the Q&A and how the chat's going to work. Share where you're coming to us from and what instruments you teach or whatever. Kristen, mine was number 1 until my husband and I revamped the business. Charge what you're worth. Yes, I'll definitely talk about that later. So yeah, type in the Q&A where you're from and what you teach. Louisiana and piano. Oh my gosh. Louisiana is an oven right now. My brother lives in Louisiana. He lives in Thibodaux, Louisiana. Outside Ontario, Canada. Piano, voice, and theory. Awesome. Morgantown, North Carolina, piano theory and comp, Colorado, guitar. Awesome. Nice. Very good. Well, thanks for sharing that. It's great to see where folks are from. Awesome. Okay. So, yeah, so all of these things are things that many musicians and music teachers have thought and at moments in time. And we've worked with a ton of different music teachers, and I can tell you that these are all very common things that we go to in order to recruit to try to make ourselves look more attractive. So, our next scenario for you to think about for recruiting is you've just moved to a new town where you know no one. You're eager to start a studio. What do you do to get started? Be specific. So all of us have done this before where we had to start our own studio and had to recruit students. So what did you do to get started, or what would you do if this was you to get started? And try to be specific. And you can share it in the little Q&A section. There's like, that is my life right now. Like, what am I supposed to do? Yeah. And there's no wrong answer here, by the way. This is just what people have tried and what you have tried, and or what you are currently trying. Years ago, before everything was online, post flyers around my town. Now I use Facebook groups and posting in online groups. Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, April. And posting flyers around town is still effective for some people. I mean, something that I preach all the time is you try a little bit of everything until you find the thing that brings you in the most leads. And then once you find that thing, you keep going down that same path. Yeah, local mom groups and homeschool groups on Facebook. Great. Get a website set up, post on Facebook and share, talk with local business owners. I tried flyers in my old town and most places would not allow it because it wasn't an event. Yeah, so there's always rules, right? So it's always important to ask before you do anything. Okay, great. So let's say that was you. And let's say like you're starting at the studio from the ground up, and how are you feeling about it? Like if you're trying to recruit a few more students, are you feeling confident? Are you feeling scared? Are you feeling self-doubting? Feeling some imposter syndrome, excited, nervous, or other? So in the Q&A, go ahead and type which of these things you would be feeling when you're thinking about recruiting new students for your private studio or starting one. For me, it was like 2 through 4 and 6, and a little bit excited about what if it did actually work. 4, 5, and 6. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and so 2 through 4 and 5. So this is all very normal. These are all normal feelings that we have. Why? Because whenever you start a studio or when you're recruiting students for your current studio, most of the time that is a new skill that you've never had to do before. So when you first started learning your instrument, you had some of these same feelings too. You were not sure how everything was going to go. And unfortunately, in music school, we're not taught marketing, we're not taught business. And every single private music teacher is a small business owner. So if you're trying to recruit or get leads for your business, of course you're going to feel these things because you've never done it before. So a lot of times musicians and music teachers think that they're the only ones that have these feelings that come up, but it's everyone because you've never done it before, or it's not familiar, or it's not comfortable, and it's not predictable. So whenever there's that little thing of the unknown, that's when all of these self-doubting, imposter syndrome stuff starts coming up. So it's just important to recognize that you are not alone if you're feeling those things. Okay, our second scenario before we get into the juicy stuff. Let's say you send out 200 plus emails to local music teachers introducing yourself and asking for student referrals. You get 0 replies. What's the next thing that you do? And just share it in the Q&A. Yeah, Sam says cry. Valid, you know? Yeah, for sure. This is super common. So what do you do next? After you cry, after you feel a little like, maybe this isn't meant for me, maybe this isn't what I should be doing with my life. What do you do next? Yeah, while you're thinking about the next move, yeah, find out where you can talk to them face to face instead. Awesome. Very good. Yes. Just know that emailing is a thing that is a craft, and that just because you don't get replies from people doesn't mean that they think that you're crap. Okay. So many of us, as soon as we send out an email, we get 0 replies to think, oh, they must not think I'm valid or worthy or whatever. I mean, we never know what's going on in people's lives that prevent them from replying to our emails and stuff. So it is a total art in order to learn how to get people to reply to emails, and also how to continue to reach out to them without being pushy. So it is definitely an art to doing this, and it's definitely not a thing that you should necessarily take personally, especially the first time out. Yeah, try again. Excellent. Okay. So, how do you feel about those lack of replies, and what do you do next? So, here's a few examples. Do you feel defeated and try something else? Do you feel motivated and try again but differently? Do you self-doubt yourself and decide to try to get a job at a music store or school instead? Imposter syndrome, maybe going back to school is what is needed, or excited, jump back in and crack the code, or other. So, type in the Q&A which thing you would do. I've done number 4 as well as number 2 and number 5. The number 4 was in my youth. 4 is always on the mind, but 2. 3 and 4. Yeah, totally. Awesome. Okay, cool. Great. So these are all things that people do and have tried. And so next, we're going to go through some of the things that I personally have done myself and have coached other people through that I did wrong. We're going to talk about why those things were wrong, why they didn't work. And then I'm going to show you 3 things that are very important and why they do work. And then we're going to have some examples of those things. Okay. So the 3 things that I did wrong. So one of the first things that I did wrong was I emailed this specific flyer to different band directors and posted the flyers in band rooms. So take a look at my flyer and see if you can identify what's wrong with the flyer. And once you have some ideas about what's wrong with the flyer, type it in the chat. Now, I should say also that emailing flyers or posting flyers is not inherently bad. That can be a very helpful marketing strategy. But if you're just emailing them and posting them, and maybe the flyer has this type of content on it, it might not yield the results that you hope it to. So what do you guys think is wrong? Looks a little distracting. Okay. Anything else you guys can pick out? So again, I just made the flyer. I emailed it to some band directors without ever having met them. And I asked them to print this out and put it in their band room. So there's a couple assumptions that I had. Number 1, that the band director was actually going to print it off and put it in their band room. I don't know if you've been in a public school recently, but most public school teachers do not have color printers. So anytime you email something and are asking it to be printed out, it needs to not have a ton of color on it because it's going to be printed out in black and white anyway, right? So like make sure that it's going to look good in black and white as well. Okay. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the other assumption is that the kids that are in that classroom are going to understand what lessons are. If you're a normal band kid or normal orchestra kid or chorus kid, you might not have any clue about what lessons are. Or if you do, you might be thinking, okay, I go into a room with this adult who I don't know, and they tell me everything I'm doing wrong. And then they have to tell me I have to practice. Ick. That does not sound fun to me. Why would I want to put myself through that? Right. So that's another thing, is assuming that kids know what lessons are. The third assumption is that even if a kid rips off the little thing with my contact information, is that that thing is going to get from their classroom to home in the hands of their parent. So that's the third assumption, is that that little tiny piece of paper is not going to get lost in the bottom of a book bag for like 10 months. So there's lots of assumptions that happen with that. And then lastly, the content of this is talking about things like tone, technique, auditioning skills, sight reading, performing, recitals, field trips, holiday caroling, and studio parties. So we're making the assumption that a 12-year-old knows what the word tone means, the word technique means, auditioning skills. What? I have to audition? That doesn't sound like fun at all. Sight reading? Oh, I hate sight reading. It's the scariest thing. Performing? I have to get up on a stage and play in front of everyone? No, thank you. So it doesn't paint the picture of why private lessons are actually really cool and really fun, and why these particular students should want to contact us for private lessons. Okay. So whenever you're sending these things out, it's really important that you're not assuming things are going to happen in your favor, but that you lay it out so that it becomes very easy for people to say yes, and it becomes very easy for people to contact you. So that was the first thing. And I had a lot of assumptions when I sent this flyer. The second thing that I did wrong, and that many, many, many private teachers do wrong, is I was a cookie cutter music teacher. It's not our fault. When you go to music school, you're taught to play Mozart this way. You're taught to play Beethoven this way. You're taught to give a recital this way. You're taught to bow this way. So we're very, very comfortable having a template, following the template, getting a good grade, pleasing our teachers, and feeling like that we're successful. So when you become an entrepreneur, small business owner, private music teacher, you will naturally want to look and see what other people are doing so that you can follow that same mold. And it's what I like to call being a cookie cutter music teacher. So, like when you show up online, like what I did as a young 20-something-year-old musician, was I would write things like, I played with this orchestra and have degrees from here and there. And I want to foster a love of music in all students. So something I tell the people that I work with is, if I can copy and paste anything on your website and put it on any other music teacher's website, it's not specific enough. And that is one thing that so many musicians and music teachers do wrong when they're trying to recruit, is that they're not standing out. Because in classical music, we've been taught to fit in, to play the excerpts a certain way in order to get the success, to follow everything written on the page to the T so that it can be as accurate as possible. But when you're being an entrepreneur, small business owner, you have to figure out how to stand out so that you're not just in there with the rest of the herd of music teachers. We do this because it's comfortable. We do this because we see other people doing it and we're like, oh, if they did it, then that's what I should do. And so as soon as you start stepping out of that, then that's where you're like, what are people going to think if I like have a picture of my dog on my website or something, right? So we start worrying about what other people are thinking, that we're not going to look professional or whatever. So it's important to not be the cookie cutter music teacher. And we're going to talk more about that in a little bit. The third thing I did wrong was I didn't have a studio policy, a contract, or any expectations for my students or their parents. I was just learning, so I was just winging it. And I always say, like, I'm just like, if you're a surgeon, right? And if you have to have brain surgery and your surgeon comes up to you and is like, yeah, I'm just learning. This is just my side hustle. It's not really like, it's just something I do for fun on the side. So we don't really have to have a plan. We don't really have to have an insurance liability waiver. I'm just going to wing it. How would that make you feel? So if we don't present ourselves as professional musicians or are people who are very, very committed to teaching private lessons, then of course it's going to be hard to recruit students, because if you're not taking it seriously, why should they take it seriously? And it's totally fine if teaching music lessons is your side hustle, but the way you present it matters. And so you have to present it like you're all in. You have to have your stuff together. The more policies, contracts, and expectations you have, the better it's going to be for you, because you're going to look like a more put together business person who knows what they're doing. So 3 things next that, the underlying thing with all of these 3 things, okay? So all of these things are super common. I'm guilty of all 3 of them. I'm sure if you're joining us today, you're guilty of some of these too, either that you're currently doing or you have done in the past. And they all have this underlying theme, which I call the jellyfish perspective. So jellyfish are like super cool creatures. However, they're just super chill. They float around hoping something yummy is going to come their way, that they're going to eat it, and they just hope, and they try a little bit, but it's not really strategic. There's not really a boundary. They just kind of go with the flow, literally, and they just hope for the best. So for a lot of music teachers, since we're not taught how to market music lessons, we try a little bit of everything. And then when we get discouraged with it, then we're like, oh, I must not be cut out for this. This must not be the job I should go for. Maybe I do need to go back to school. Maybe I should, try to think about how to do things differently. And it's a shame, because it's a great job and you can make a full-time income doing it. And it's super cool to hang out with kids all the time, or adult students who are interested in learning an instrument. But you have to think about it like a marketer or like a fox. You have to be smart and strategic. Foxes work with their family pack or with their network, and they have clear boundaries of where they hunt, and they are opportunists and take risks and put themselves out there. They don't just hide behind their computer hoping that their next prey is going to like pop out and then they can snatch them from the computer. They're actually out there doing the work, the footwork, and meeting new foxes and figuring out their environment. So we have to be like a fox when you're thinking about recruiting and filling your private music studio. It's all about relationships. Now, a lot of you are like, but I'm an introvert. Like, I don't like putting myself out there. Dude, I'm an introvert too. It has taken me a long time to learn how to do things like this and be okay with it. And I always go back on the idea, if putting myself out there can help one person, then it is totally worth it. So for recruiting for students, those kids need you. There's some kid out there who really needs you to be their mentor, their music teacher, and to be behind them every step of the way. So if you're scared about putting yourself out there, you're never going to meet that student and you're never going to have that positive impact on their life. So you might as well do it, and so that you eventually will get to those students who need you, and you'll learn how to do it better and better. So now for our 3 must-haves for this. We all hear the word networking, and some people hide and cry, and some people are like, yes. So I can tell you from my own experience, every single student that I currently teach has come from someone that I know. Someone has referred that student to me. Now, your network exceeds beyond your local community. So if you teach in-person lessons in your local community, it's all about who you know, the other music teachers, the school music teachers, people who have access to your audience, your ideal audience. If you're online, your network is also important. Who do you know that can vouch for you? Who do you know that can say that you're the real deal and send students to you? Where do you show up online? That is also part of location. How are you showing up online? Are you showing up just on your website? Are you showing up on listing sites? Are you showing up? Is your website backlinked from other websites? So the location super matters, no matter if you're in person or if you are online. It's all about where you show up and how you show up. Now, in addition to that cookie cutter mindset that classical musicians typically have, the other thing that we typically do is we talk all about ourselves. I always talk about music as kind of being like a solo sport. Of course, when you play in ensembles, it's a team sport for sure, but you're in the practice room doing your own practice. You're cultivating your own skill set. You are by yourself. And so it's all about you all the time. And you see all of these musician bios floating around, and it's all of our, places we played or how we show up or whatever. And so when we go to make a new connection, a lot of times we will talk all about ourselves instead of talking about what we can do for them. Like, what problem can we solve for them? The them is your network. It's either music teachers, it is people who have access to your ideal audience. Like, what can you do for them? How can you bring value to them instead of you just talking about how wonderful you are and how great your lessons are? What's in it for them? So that is something that is incredibly important to remember when you are building your location and you are building your network. It's not all about you. It's all about them. And how can you be more of service to your community instead of them wanting to be in your studio? What can you do for them? That attracts people a lot better. Second, obviously, clear policies and a payment structure. So you can avoid a lot of unpleasantness if you have super clear policies. Most people that Natalie and I work with, they come in with like very loose policies or no policy at all. And then they complain about students canceling at the last minute, or parents like being super behind in payment, or like students not practicing, or all of this stuff. And all of that can be avoided if you lay it out clearly in your contract and you go over it with them in that first trial lesson. You're laying down your rules and your boundaries. People love rules and boundaries. Like in college, the professors that had like the 10-page long syllabus with every single due date and like every single extra credit thing, we loved them. We knew exactly what to do. We knew exactly what the attendance policy was, versus the professor with the 1-page, like very general policy, right? So we want to be as specific as we possibly can in our policy, because it shows that we know stuff. It shows that we know what to expect. It shows we're professional, that we have an idea of exactly what we want to do and exactly how things are going to go in our private studio. And a lot of people think the opposite. They think, well, if I have a cushy policy, people will be more prone to take lessons with me. But if you have a really exact policy, it actually makes you show that you mean business and that this is your job. This is your life. This is your livelihood. So you have to have that. The last one is the most important one. This goes back to the cookie cutter thing. You have to have an idea of your studio culture and what your students' families are looking for. You cannot just be a music teacher who teaches music. Yeah, that's primarily what we do. But what does that look like for you? How does that look different for you? What do you add or bring to music lessons that no one else is doing in your community? How are you not a cookie cutter music teacher? And that's probably one of the hardest things most people have. So I want you to think about that, because I'm going to ask you in a minute, what makes you not be a cookie cutter music teacher? What do you do differently in your lessons? So this next thing is just a little bit about for marketing online. So how you do these things online. For your location and network, you have to engage on social with people in your community. And in terms of this, community can be local or it can be broad. It can be everyone. You don't need to have a separate studio Facebook page. You can just use your personal bio or your personal profile if that is the thing that you're okay with. Now, obviously, if you have like non-professional things on your personal profile, no judgment, but then for sure make a different studio page. But for the algorithm, the more followers that you have, the more it's going to get in front of people. So instead of starting from scratch, go ahead and use what you've already got, and then use that page to show your work. That doesn't mean I'm now accepting new piano students. Contact me if you want to join my studio. No, don't do that. Please don't do that. That does not work. What does work is like, for example, I had a student earlier today. Her name is Lois. She just came back from Korea. She's going into the 6th grade. We had a whole full-blown conversation about food in Korea and how it's different. And she also brought me back some candy and stuff. So what I would do if I were trying to recruit right now is I would take a selfie with Lois with her present she brought me back from Korea. And I'd post that on my personal profile to be like, yeah, Lois, back from Korea, our first lesson. She brought me this, that, and the other. We made a plan for the rest of the summer to get her ready for 6th grade. Boom. So then my network sees I'm teaching a student who's a rising 6th grader. This student was thoughtful enough to bring me a present from Korea. So that means I must, be a pretty good teacher for her to want to do that. And oh, look how cute Lois is, right? So it's a way for you to stay top of mind with your community. So I'm not bragging about how great Lois is. I'm not bragging about how great I am. I'm sharing my work. I'm showing my work. I taught a lesson today, and this is what we did. She also thought that it was super cool that Korea has a blue house instead of a white house because it's like different. Like the White House is like the blue house. And we talked about that. So that would be like a cool thing to add in a post like that. Not, I'm now accepting new students. No, more like, look at Lois. Look how much fun we're having. She's comfortable enough to tell me about the blue house in Korea and bring me candy. And then somebody who's looking around is like, huh, my kid looks like that. My kid would do really well with a teacher like that. Let me remember that for later. See how that works? It's different, totally different approach. Marketing online for policies and payment structure. So you have to show up online like a business owner. You are one, right? Like music studio teaching is your full-time gig, and that you have clear policies, that you are serious about this, that this is important to you, that you're a music education warrior, as I call us, okay? I was speaking to someone last month or something, and they were like, yeah, I don't want to tell my orchestra colleagues that I'm interested in starting a studio because I'm scared of what they're going to think of me. Do you think that I invited that person to be part of my program? No. If you're not willing to stand up and say, this is what I do, this is important, this is going to change the world way more than me playing in that orchestra, then that's who you need to be if you want to be successful at recruiting. Not like, I'm ashamed that I'm doing this thing, I'd rather be doing that thing, and so therefore, here I am, send me students. No one wants to take lessons with a teacher like that. So when you show up online, you have to be music education warrior, no matter what. Last thing for this is the idea of your studio culture and what your students' families are looking for. So when I was actively recruiting, the most viewed page on my website was the photos page. And that's because people wanted to see my work. They wanted to see that their kid would fit in, that their kid is going to have a good time. Like, what does it actually look like being in lessons with this person? So, I had hundreds of photos on my old site from our Halloween concert and kids dressed up like cotton candy. That was the winner of the costume contest that year. Or, like when we would have parties and different things we'd do, or field trips to the symphony. They could picture their own student being part of that family and part of that group. And so therefore, that's really, really what drew them to me. Wasn't that I had a doctorate in flute. It wasn't that I played in international competitions. It was that I had a Halloween recital and kids dressed up like cotton candy. And that was different from every single other music teacher that they looked up. So examples of this, what are some real world examples of this? So the first one is the cookie cutter. The second one is how you can write online in order to get people to be more into you. This is the culture thing to make you not a cookie cutter. Number one, cookie cutter. My name is Dr. Katherine Emeneth, and I'm a professional musician and teacher. I attended the University of Georgia for my undergraduate and master's degrees, and the University of Washington for my Doctor of Musical Arts degree. I'm a passionate educator. I help students with their fundamentals such as tone, technique, traditional repertoire, and orchestral excerpts. I'm especially interested in working with advanced students who want to pursue music in college. Send me an email and we'll get started with lessons. So who is number one all about? Is it about them? It's not about them. This one's all about me, right? Like I'm talking about like why you should want to come and study with me because look how fancy I am. And again, if you're a kid or a parent, you don't know what these words mean. You know, it's like somebody talking to me about tennis. I don't know anything about tennis, right? So you have to talk to your audience. This is a deterrent. Okay, this says I'm only interested in this type of person. What kid thinks that they're advanced? Most kids don't think that they're advanced. And if they are advanced, they're probably already taking lessons with someone. So this is a deterrent for getting students. Number two, hi, my name is Katherine. My students call me Dr. E, and I'm a flute teacher. I've had all the fancy education a musician can have, and my passion is teaching private flute lessons. I sucked as a beginner flute player. I was last year in sixth grade band. After taking private lessons, I shot to the top of the section, and then I was hooked. Lessons in my studio look a little different. My gigantic fluffy dog is always in attendance, helping students play better. At least that's what he thinks. We have a super fun Halloween recital complete with costumes, as well as a ton of other parties. Whether your goal is to make all-state band or just have more confidence in playing, I've got you. So if you're a kid or a person who's looking for a music teacher for your kid, who you gonna hire? Who you gonna contact if you have no idea about music? Probably number two, right? So that's how you write for your ideal audience. Most people feel like they suck, which is why they're trying to look for lessons, right? So this is saying that I sucked as a beginner flute player, and I get that. I know what that feels like. And now I know how to fix that for other people too. So my question for you to write in the Q&A. What do you do in your studio or will do in your studio that is 100% you and not a cookie cutter copy of what you see others doing? So what do you do that makes you magnetic, that makes people want to be in your world? What makes it different? Go ahead and type it in the Q&A, and then I'll share some examples of how I do it more specifically. And by the way, if the answer is I don't know, that's okay. I bet you now you're going to start thinking about it. So what do you do in your studio or will do in your studio that is 100% you? And not a cookie cutter example. Type it in the Q&A. Use a lot of games, boom cards, and starting group lessons this fall, something that no other teacher in my area does as far as I know. Excellent. Great. So group lessons are especially good for kids who maybe do better in groups than individual, right? So if my kid I know is going to be too intimidated by doing one-on-one and you're the only teacher that's offering group lessons, then yeah, I'm going with you. Anybody else? Tend to focus on helping students create their own music over learning a repertoire. Awesome. So for kids who don't want to be geared and learn the classical repertoire or whatever, and they want to do more composition, then you're a really good one in town to go with. Teach music theory. Haven't seen any other teacher who does specific music theory group lessons, and especially none that are fun. Yeah, exactly. You got to make music theory fun. Horn ensembles, and recently started some of my adult students offering to help with younger students, being accountability partners or more mentoring. Games and studio class, community performances. Excellent. Leverage a lot of technology. Purpose for group will also be to offer lessons at a lower cost than private one-on-one. Yeah, so you're listening to your community, right? If you know that your community cannot afford your rate for one-on-one lessons, then you rethink it. Doesn't mean you shouldn't not teach lessons. You rethink it and you think of a way that will benefit your community. A lot of people say charge what you're worth. Yes, but also charge what they're going to pay, right? So it's got to be a combination of those two things. You never want to be a bargain bin teacher because that drives the value of our offerings very low. But you also have to know what the going rate is in your area and what the income status is for the people in your area. So right now I charge like $70 an hour. If you were able to break it down in Seattle, it'd be 100 easily just because of where I'm located and all of that. So charge what you're worth is great, but also you have to charge what they're going to pay. Willing to do buddy lessons, considering that in lieu of groups lessons. Yeah, buddy lessons are also great. Good. So here are some of the ways that I do it. So I have a gigantic bear. His name is Sam. My husband got him for my 30th birthday, and we lived in Seattle in like a tiny house. And I'm like, what the hell am I supposed to do with this gigantic bear? Studio mascot. So Sam the bear dresses up like whatever big topic we're talking about for the semester or for a quarter or whatever. In this case, he was Firebird. So we talked about Stravinsky. We talked about the flute part in Stravinsky and all of that kind of stuff. And so they learned about that. So Sam goes with us to field trips, goes to every single recital. After they play their first recital, they all get this little trophy and they keep it forever. And it's a super special thing. This is my program wall. It is full now. This is kind of an old picture, but I have students design the program cover for every single recital. And then I post it, I put them up here on this wall. So then this is their space. This is the thing that they created for our studio or our flute family that they have stock in. And so I do 4 recitals a year, which is also something that's very different than most music teachers, 2 solo and 2 chamber. And so there's lots of programs there. We play games and lessons. Like I have a scale pail where they pick out the different scales that they play. We have a congratulations board whenever anybody gets anything, their driver's license, their learner's permit. If they get like an A on like an AP Chem test that they have been sweating about, we put it on the congratulations board to show that achievements in music are great, but all achievements are great too, and that you should feel good about that. So we have lots of different traditions that we do. For recitals, we have our Halloween recital. When I taught adult students, we had a special adult student recital. We do chamber ensemble recitals. We have cool instruments that we learn with. I don't know about you, but I didn't play with a harpist until I was in college. So how cool is it that little Robin got to learn how to play with a harp from memory as a 10-year-old? That was her first exposure to that. So my whole philosophy is share with them everything, share them the whole world of music, so that even if they don't pursue music in college, they've had every single experience that I possibly can provide for them. Plus, let's do it in a fun way. And lastly, for student recruiting, you have to put yourself out there. You have to be genuine, authentic, and a nice person that people like to work with. You have to try many times in many different ways before seeing results. And you cannot put yourself in the trash can if you try something and it doesn't work out. If you try something and it doesn't work, that's information you've learned. Don't do that again, or try it differently. So many people will try and fail and then stop. And as an entrepreneur, and Sam can share with you too, you have to keep going every day. You have to work every day to keep your business going. It doesn't stop. That's just part of the gig, is you're never going to be in a place where you're not working for the next chapter of what you're doing. And yeah, once you get to a certain place, you can breathe a little bit easier, but you always have to plant seeds for the future, for your future growth for recruitment. So to review, you have to have a clear understanding of the if-then statements. You have to be the fox, not the jellyfish. You have to have that location network, that clear policies, your culture, and confidence. And you have to take a risk to put yourself out there. So most of the time when I talk to people about student recruiting, they're like, yeah, this sounds really good, but how do I do that? Or I think that's all reasonable, but I don't know if I could do it. Or man, that sounds like a whole lot of work. I don't even know where to start. And that's valid because it is a lot. So I do have a program for that. And we are having an enrollment period right now. We have 4 spots left in this program. And as soon as those 4 spots go, then that's going to be it, especially going into the fall, which is prime time recruiting time. So if you want some more help, or if you just want me to look under your hood about what you're doing with everything, then I'm offering free calls right now. Okay. So I'm just offering free calls about developing your studio. If you feel like you're doing most of this and you're still not seeing results, book a call and I will listen to it and I will see if I can find the hole or the problem. I'm going to put the link in the Q&A thing if you want to check it out. There it is. And you'll see if you're a right fit for the program. You may be or you may not be. Okay. I'm very honest with people if you're a good fit or not. And by the way, this program is by invitation only. I'm not going to invite you if you're not the right fit, because our cohort is really special. We're all music education warriors, and you have to have that mindset before we're going to invite you to come in and join it. We're all about changing the world of music and changing what a professional musician's life can look like and career can look like by teaching privately and having an impact in kids or adults' lives and in our music community. But either way, I'm definitely going to give you value. So what happens? I listen to your story. You share how you've gone about building a studio. What would you do to build a studio? I offer my 2 cents, and then we're going to determine if you're going to be a good fit for the program. If you are a good fit, I'll show you more about the program, and then you have 2 options. You can keep going it alone, using all the free resources you can, and hoping that it's going to work, or you can learn how to do this thing and be up and running in 6 months. And we've helped hundreds of people do this, and we've seen every single thing that you can possibly run into with developing private studio. And you have the confidence. That's what people say. The number one thing they gain from working with us is confidence in themselves to run their own business. Or you could keep trying to figure out it on your own. So you have to think, like, if all I did was give you our entire vault worth of information with examples of what's working now to build private studios and to recruit, or to help you become confident, or help you learn how to recruit students without feeling icky, would it be worth investing in? Probably, for most people it is. You learned a lot in music school, but you didn't learn this stuff. So I hope you will take the opportunity to schedule a call. Now, I am not pushy. I'm not a pushy human at all. I'm a super big introvert. I'm a marshmallow, guys. So I'm not going to like sabotage you. I just want to really talk to you and see if I can help you. That's my main goal in life, is to help musicians learn how to do this so that you can make a full-time income and be very confident in doing so you can change the world and be that music education warrior. So go ahead and book that call right now. I'm starting to teach band camp tomorrow. Marching band camp is upon us. So my availability is pretty limited. But again, for the folks that are in my program right now, we have a whole fall recruitment strategy for every single person of what they're going to do first, second, third, fourth, what they need to be doing now in order to get their foot in the door. And we have goals of like recruiting 8 students, 10 students. Okay, I'm ready to go for 20 students. So there we have goals that are lined out for them so that they can hit those numbers, and we can get an exact idea of what they need to do in their community and what they can offer their community as service in order to get those results. All right. So that link is right there in the chat. Go ahead and check it out. In the meantime, what questions do you have?
Oops. What? Oh, there we go. Awesome. That was fantastic. So everyone, please use the Q&A thread here for any questions. We've got 5 minutes or so left. So while you're thinking up the questions, that was fantastic. I mean, I think this is one of those topics that it's a hot button issue for everybody. It's even as I was sitting there, I'm looking through some of the what not to do's, and it's like I've definitely posted the hey, I have a few openings. Does anyone want to listen? Like, you know, I've definitely done those things before. And I thought the breakdown of the flyer that you posted was great on sort of not highlighting the right information about the lessons, just assuming too much because we all come from that music world. So it's like we tone and technique is obvious to us,
Yeah.
but you're right in the fact that a 12-year-old picking up the flyer is probably gonna have no idea what you mean. And yeah, I think that's definitely right on point. And I love the idea of doing the playbooks, having the students design like the playbills and things
Yeah.
for recitals. That's such a great way of getting them engaged. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, that's brilliant. But
Thanks.
yeah, if anyone has questions, just throw them in the chat or in the Q&A section here, and we'll address them.
And honestly, like the culture aspect, I mean, that's why I've been so successful and why people who've done my program have been successful because they lean into that. They lean into their goofy nature. They lean into the things that they value and the things that their students value. I mean, there's a reason why we have a chocolate fountain party at flute camp, right? And it's not because it's because they're like, Dr. E, can we have a chocolate fountain party? And most teachers would be like, oh my gosh, first of all, like a chocolate fountain's like $80. It's going to make a huge mess. They're going to get it all over their performance shirt. No, we're not doing it. But, you listen to them. If that's what they want, that's what we're doing. And some kids come to flute camp just for the chocolate fountain party, because that's the thing that piques their interest. So it really, really is about that being not a cookie cutter person and leaning into the things that make you stand out.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the cookie cutter idea is important there. Like you said, if you could take content from your website and drop it on any other website, then it's too generic. And I
Yeah.
think that's, um, kind of a big thing that I think too many teachers, and like I said myself, guilty of it as well, is just kind of thinking the generic things are just going to work. And then, as you were saying, the other stuff earlier about either lowering your prices to get new students, or which the one I'm very guilty of is being too flexible and just
Hmm.
being like, oh, that's fine, we can reschedule for tomorrow or whatever, or for a long time, I mean, partly my situation is a little different because I'm running Musi as well as teaching. So I have to I'm more likely to cancel on my students than they are to cancel on me. So I do have a funny situation there, but I definitely, once I kind of set a more structured policy, it was a lot easier to manage for both of us.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Oh yeah, and Heather has a great question. I get asked this all the time. How do you advertise your studio culture when you haven't established it yet? So, whenever you're starting a studio or whenever you don't have a lot of students, you think about what you would do, you know? What would I do? How would I make this look? And then you speak to that. That's the thing that you speak to. And as you start getting student after student coming in, then you find ways to capture that studio culture in photos with the parents' permission, of course, and video and all of that to show your work online. So then that's like, okay, this kid is not just like standing up and slaying this piece. They're standing up and slaying this piece while also balancing a pumpkin on their head. you know so that's how you develop that. So for example, when I started my studio in Seattle, I had 0 students, but I knew I wanted to work with littles. I knew I wanted to work with little kids. So on my studio website, I made this whole program called the Newbie Flutie. And it's where it was like a 5-week program And it was like one-on-one lessons and group lessons. And at the end, we would have the first five fiesta, which is where they would play their first five notes. They might play a little, group ensemble piece. We'd have a piñata, all of that, little mini recital for parents, et cetera, et cetera. I never ran a newbie flutie program ever, but the fact that I put that up there made it so that the people would contact me because that looked so clever and different. And I was specific about what we were going to cover. And I did it in a unique and authentic way. So when they would contact me, I said, I don't have a newbie group right now, but we can do lessons instead. And if a newbie group comes up, then we can do that. And they were like, yes, that would be great. And so then as they trickled in, then I started doing chamber ensemble stuff with them. So it wasn't newbie flutie, but it was a variation of it. And I think a lot of times as musicians, we get so like, it's going to look like this if I do it. And if it doesn't look like this, then that means it doesn't work. But that's not the case at all. You put that stuff out there to make yourself magnetic. You get them in, and then you figure it out as you go, So it doesn't have to be set in stone. There's flexibility that is always allowed. So yeah, like create stuff like newbie flutie and put it out there just to show that culture and see what happens.
Yeah, that's a great one. And I actually, because I do all online teaching, my sort of version of that is I offer VR lessons to students. And obviously that's one of those things where not actually that many people take you up on it because you have to have all this stuff. But it's one of those where parents will be like, well, that's cool. Like, and they'll ask about it, and that at least like initiates the conversation. And then they're like, oh, actually, I think I'd probably just rather private one-on-one lessons. I'm like, no problem. Like, come this way. And we have done a few of the VR lessons, and they are pretty cool. But it is, it's that's something unique that when parents see it, they're like, oh, that's such a creative way of engaging. And it's like kind of going to the students level as far as like a lot of the younger kids have the like Oculus headsets.
Yeah.
So, I kind of connect on that level. Or like, one, if anyone wants just a freebie, Minecraft is probably the most popular game ever created. I had to learn how to play it just so that because they would not stop talking about it. So I ended up having to download Minecraft and play it a bunch myself so that I knew what was going on. So anything Minecraft related, if you wanted to do some kind of like Minecraft camp or something, I am sure you will get an influx of students. And that one's boys and girls. That's not, that one works for everyone, especially if you're looking at the younger kids. So just those kinds of ideas of just being unique, I think is spot on.
Yeah, and listening to what they say, like
Yeah.
you listen, they kept on talking about Minecraft, 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 and you're like, huh, okay, that's in the kids' world. I should probably do something around that. And then that ends up being the magnet, not just like guitar lessons. Guitar lessons are great, but Minecraft and guitar lessons, oh my gosh, chocolate fountain party
Yeah.
and flute camp. Taylor Swift friendship bracelet making and learning Taylor Swift flute ensemble music, count me in.
Yep.
Right. So those are the things that hook students, not have a beautiful tone and technique. So that's how we have to think about recruiting for sure from their world. How can we and there's a reason why I wear Adidas Superstars to every single band sectional that I teach, or Vans or Chucks or whatever. They're always like, what start are you going to wear this time? Because I always wear wild shoes that are the shoes that they wear,
Yep. I think that's fantastic. Connecting on the level with the students is incredibly important. And it's fun. I mean, it literally makes it more fun. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And like we know in marketing, you have to know the person, you have to like the person, and you have to trust the person. So the way that you get to that is not by doing any of this music stuff, it's by building relationships with people, whether it's kids or their parents or your network, your professional network. So that's how to do that. You got to get that in first before you can expect your numbers to increase.
Absolutely. Well, this has been brilliant, and thank you so much for taking the time to come out here and share this with everybody. And as I said in the chat, definitely take Katherine up on the free call at the very least, that's sort of no pain there on both sides. So I
Yeah.
would strongly suggest you do that, and definitely check out the rest of her work. There's tons of great resources, and the courses and everything that you're offering is, a huge value to music teachers. So thank you.
Oh, well, thanks for having me. It was great. Always fun to talk to my people and all the music education warriors out there. So really
Absolutely.
appreciate it.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thanks so much. And everyone that's showed up, thank you for attending. There will be a recording of this, so we'll get access to that soon enough. And so if you missed, the beginning or something, you can go back and check that out. But again, thank you so much for showing up, and I hope you all have a great day.
All right, great. Thank you. Bye,
Okay.
guys.
See ya.